Hi, and welcome to CoreWalking, a step in the right direction. I am Jonathan Fitzgordon,
And I'm Caitlin Fitzgordon.
and we are here to bring you another episode of the podcast. And you might notice that I have a new co-host because Alex has become very busy and very successful, and he can no longer do this with me. So I'm interviewing new podcast hosts, and today's guest definitely has the inside track on being the next co-host. This is my wife, Caitlin. Caitlin is a coach and a yoga teacher. And Caitlin, you want to say anything about yourself? Welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here. It's fun to be talking with you about this stuff.
You better get your audition right, I'll tell you that.
My audition?
Yeah, this is your audition. Yeah.
Oh, audition. I thought you said addition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I garble my words. That's part of my charm, isn't it?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you want to give any bio about yourself?
Yeah, we met in yoga teacher training in 1999, so I've been teaching since then, and also had a career as a childbirth educator and birth worker, and also coaching started about 12 or 15 years ago. I can't remember now. And yeah, I'm always committed to supporting people through transformation and change and all the hard things.
That's great. So Alex and I definitely had a certain dynamic, and we were very much in the same world. And Alex was a teacher who had trained with me. So we're going to see where the podcast goes because Caitlin has a different approach, but she has amazing things to share. So we might have some new and different topics as well. We have two kids. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, shockingly so. I am taking a course of meds for hepatitis C that I've had for 40 years and kind of kicking my butt, but I'm getting through it. I'm halfway through. But today I woke up with a fairly nasty cough and cold, so we'll see if I can manage to avoid coughing. There's a very weird thing about teaching where if I want to demonstrate a pose in a group class, I almost always nail it. Like I almost always get the pose right. But if I tried that same pose at home by myself, it just will not happen. So I think that's, some people wither under the performance light, and I actually don't. So I am hoping that in the same way, I will not cough for the next hour or so. So we'll see how that goes.
Let's hope.
So ostensibly, we are going to talk today about exercise toys, which I am a huge fan of. And we're going to start with the feet, and we might only get to the feet. But if you can see behind me here in my office, I just have laid out some of the toys that I like most, and we'll try to cover all of them. So if you're watching on YouTube, you're able to see those videos. And if you're listening, I will put pictures of everything and descriptions up on the show page. All right, sound good, Caitlin? You have anything to add about exercise toys?
You love your toys.
What toys do you love? Do you use any of these things?
Of the things that you have back there, none of them regularly, but I have a neck orthotic that I use. I like using a strap for constructive rest. My yoga mat, that's not really a toy. Um, Sometimes yoga tune-up balls and a roller, things like that.
Oh, that's great. So, um, the thing about toys is technically you should be able to change your body and do anything you want without the help of them, right? You want to be able to build your balance without a balance board. You want to be able to open your feet without necessarily rolling on a tennis ball. But that doesn't mean there is a negative to doing those things. So they're just things that I try to incorporate into my classes all the time. I don't use a lot of these toys in class because I don't expect everyone on Zoom to have them in their house, even though I encourage people to get a lot of these things. So we don't necessarily use them in class, but the tennis ball is something that I use in I don't know, probably a quarter to a third of my online classes. And, if I ever go into a yoga center, which I don't really do very much anymore, I will always seek out their tennis balls if they have them. They've become much more popular in the general world of yoga. So, Kate, do you have any experience of rolling out your feet on tennis balls? Do you do that ever? Well, you said you use the yoga tune-up balls.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't been focusing as much on my feet, as my hip and shoulder. But yeah, I really like the feeling of doing it under my feet for sure. Feels good.
I have things that I do with every one of my clients, and one of them is you roll out your feet on a daily basis with a tennis ball. And what's interesting about that is that you can use it in so many different ways, right? You wake up in the morning and rolling your feet out on a tennis ball is just a great way to wake up. A Chinese medicine doctor once said to me, you should wake up every morning and go walk barefoot on a dew-stained lawn, which I love that image. But we
We
do have
should
a
do
front
that.
lawn. Yeah, we should do that, but we do have a front lawn, but I don't really go out there in the morning. But on another note, that's not an exercise toy. I've become fairly obsessed with waking up every morning and going out on the porch to get sunlight into my eyes to reset my circadian rhythm. And I don't force you to do that. Do you ever do anything like that?
No, but I feel like us getting up and walking the dog, even though it's not necessarily the first activity, is an important reset for me. Like it's definitely a part of my, morning routine shifting into the day.
Yeah, no, that's totally the basic idea of resetting the circadian clock is sometime within 20 to 30 minutes of waking up, you want to get outside and let light filter and like pour into your eyes.
Yeah.
A really good thing. And try to do that before you hit the computer and try to do that before you look at
Look
your
at your
phone.
phone.
Yeah, look at your phone.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah,
me.
we could talk about that for
Yeah.
a bit. So we just got a new bed. We were gifted a king size bed, which I don't think we would ever have done that. And it's funny, you get a free bed, but you still got to buy a new bed frame and buy sheets and a comforter. So free is a relative price. And this bed is driving me a little crazy because it's kind of feels like a water bed. It's the softest bed I've ever slept on. And it's not particularly soft, but it feels that way to me. And it's so huge. It's crazy. I was thinking last night, one of our cats sleeps between us every night. And I was thinking, and now there's like 8 inches on either side of the cat. And I was
Right.
thinking, wow, I wonder if he's bummed because he really was contained. Like he was really like squished between us.
Right.
And I know you're happy to give,
So happy. I love it so much.
you do,
And I
right?
don't notice the cat anymore. He used to drive me crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And our dog, now there's room for the dog to get up. The dog often gets up at like 5:30 in the morning, joins the bed, which can ruin your sleep. So now there's room, but the bed is actually a lot higher than the other one. And she has bad hips. So I don't know that she's going to be joining us as much as she might have from the other bed. But
We
why I'm
got the
talking,
king size, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
but we
no,
got the king size because we're doing attachment parenting with the pets now. Now
that's
that
right.
the kids are grown up. Could have had a king years ago when the kids were little and we all shared a bed, but
There's no doubt. So that will definitely be. I mean, Alex and I did not cover attachment parenting, so we will definitely do an episode on attachment parenting if you pass the audition. And but not to get away from the exercise toys, but our first session together might not be about too many exercise toys, so we'll see. But I have a hard and fast rule in my world, which is, and I watch too many screens, like I know I should shut my screens off a couple of hours before I go to sleep, but I really like sports. And I am usually, especially now, it's hockey playoff season. I was up till almost 1 o'clock last night watching a pretty great Edmonton Oilers Vegas Golden Knight playoff game. So when I get up to go to bed, my ritual is to walk into my office and plug my phone in so that I don't go to sleep with my phone. and I have tried on multiple occasions to convince my wife to do the same thing, but that is not happening. What is,
No.
well, yeah, what's your excuse slash reason for, because I think that some of the reasons you've told me in the past are reasonable. What is your excuse slash reason for keeping your phone by your bed?
I mean, the biggest one was we have teenagers and we don't have a home phone. And if they're out and about, I want to have my phone next to me. So someone can hear it if there's something that happens, which I think is valid. But
I
the,
actually think that's the only valid reason. I can't,
right.
I really can't argue with that.
Yeah. But a lot of the times they're home. So, well, Ida doesn't live with us most of the time anymore. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't prevent me from sleeping.
Yeah, you sleep like a
I
rock.
sleep really well. So I read on it, sometimes play word games, and it helps me sleep.
Yeah, like I'll wake up sometimes at 3 in the morning and then I use a eye mask. I'm fairly obsessed with sleep, which is why our new waterbed is freaking me out. And I'll see from like sneaking in underneath the mask is the blue light of the phone, which drives me a little crazy. So
At 3 a.m.? I mean, that's rare. I
yeah,
rarely wake up in the middle of the night and read.
is that true? I thought you
Yeah.
did more than that's interesting.
No.
How little we know each other. And now that we have a king size bed, we'll know each other even less. It's
Exactly. We're
like
further
living
apart.
in two different counties. It really is extraordinarily large. All right, so back to the tennis ball. A lot of these things I don't do anymore in the same way that I did when I first discovered them. So I don't roll my feet out every day, but I teach two classes online every week from my membership program, and I'd say in probably half of those, we are rolling out our feet on a tennis ball. I think it's just a great way to start. So what I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself was it's a great way to wake up in the morning, right? You get out of bed and you roll out your feet, and it's like that dew-stained lawn from Chinese medicine. I always get back to like, get away from my tangents and come back sometimes. It's also great to roll out your feet before you go to sleep because a lot of people have trouble falling asleep, and rolling out your feet relaxes your whole body, right? The thickest pad of fascia under the sole of the foot is the plantar fascia. So when you roll out, and fascia is just a crazy thing in the body, connective tissue, and everything in our body is, all the soft bits are connective tissue with different like tensile strengths, and fascia is one of them. And it's a web, like fascia covers the whole body and it's interconnected. So when you roll out your feet, you're actually opening up the fascia for your entire body, which is an amazing thing. So I think it's a great thing to do before you go to sleep. Um, how do you have any trouble falling asleep ever?
Not usually. No, falling asleep is usually really easy for me. I have had occasion where I will wake up in the middle of the night, but I feel like not lately.
And how quickly would you say you fall asleep? Like out?
I mean, I have tracked it a little bit, and it's usually within 10 minutes.
That's great. Like, we've talked about sleep on the podcast, and the goal for sleep is to fall asleep within 15 minutes of laying down. And if you fall asleep within like sooner than 5 minutes, um, that's actually considered like you're sleep deprived, right? That the body needs a period of unwinding, and then if it takes longer than 15 minutes, that's actually considered insomnia, even if you fall asleep. So it's kind of relative, right? Let me let the stupid cat in. Cats want to come in, the cats want to come out. Um, so that's a pretty good a metric to follow, but when you're thinking about your sleep, how long it takes you to fall asleep. And I've taken to planning my day the following day. Like as I lay there to sleep, I'll start thinking about what I'm going to do the following morning. And I find that helps me trail off to sleep. All
That
right,
would
so
probably
back,
really help me.
what's that?
That would probably really help me to
Yeah,
think
I
about
think it's a
my,
good thing. You have
yeah.
you're busier than me. You actually wear a number of hats. You work really hard. Sometimes I feel guilty that you work harder than me, but not too guilty as these things go. So you use the balls outside of your feet. Like what do you roll out your hip?
Uh-huh.
And do you prefer a tennis ball to like the foam roller or a tune-up ball or a melt ball? You prefer that to the foam roller?
It just depends on what I'm doing. Like the foam roller is sometimes bigger than I want it to be. And like with the balls, you can get much more specific about where you want to roll out. So yeah, it
Yeah,
depends
no,
on
I
what I'm
think
doing.
that's a great thing. I am not a huge fan of the foam roller. I think everything has its purpose. The thing I don't love about the foam roller is that I think people kind of get addicted to them and they're not curative. I'm really interested in things that give us a chance to stop using them, right? Like you use the
Mhm.
foam roller to a degree and it takes care of your tight IT band, for example, and then you stop foam rolling. But I don't meet many people who ever go, oh, yeah, the foam roller fixed my issue. They just keep foam rolling. So I think it's a band-aid, and I'm not opposed to band-aids in any way, shape, or form. And there's
Well,
not,
I think like if you're moving your body and using your body a lot, why not do something that makes it feel better, even if it doesn't fix it? Like if you're constantly doing things physically that are challenging your body, you could be it's just nice to help recover. I think of it as more recovery than curative.
oh, I love that. That's interesting because I think most people or most athletes are using it as a warm-up, like to get ready to perform.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think as recovery, it's great. I mean, I'm not really against them. I don't own one. I had yours in here for a while. I don't personally use them. But what's interesting in that context is I am way too loose for my own good, right? I'm hypermobile to a degree. And, if you're not tight, what do you need a toy that opens up your tightness? Like when I bike, if I'm working with someone who's really tight and they want to bike, I will say you should probably stretch out a little bit before you bike. But I don't ever stretch before I bike. I don't ever stretch after I bike, right? Like
Right.
why do I really need it if I'm as loose as I am? But I do get that, when it's hard not to project my stuff onto people. I know I teach my yoga classes and I do not think they're very hard. And I get feedback of like, that was so hard. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just surprised because I think they're not that hard. But it's all relative and it's I'm not saying I'm a bad human being, but it can be not so easy for me to assimilate others' experiences into mine. So
Yeah.
all right, so the foam roller and the tennis ball. And you mentioned the thing you use for your shoulder, for your neck. So
Yeah.
what is that? You actually have it right there, right? Can you show it? Because I've never
Yeah.
used it. I've thought about stealing it a number of times and I haven't, but I will show you what I use.
So I got this from a chiropractor when I was having vertigo. So it's this like kind of triangle wedge. And it also has different levels. So I think there was another one when I first started using it. And it says shoulder side because you put this behind your neck and lay over it with it as close to C7 as possible on the top. And then just let your head drop back. Um, and I was told to use it by a chiropractor because I was having vertigo, and her assessment was that it was due to misalignment and that this would be a preventative activity. So I just do it in the mornings sometimes, a few days a week, just to kind of keep my neck in good.
We could definitely do an episode on vertigo. Vertigo is some crazy stuff. I have a client who's just getting over vertigo and we'll be on a session and she'll shake her head or do something to show me that she doesn't have vertigo anymore. And I'm like, don't do that. Don't, why are you going to encourage yourself to spin around the room? But I remember once we were walking the dog when you had your vertigo, and you tilted your head back and started spinning, and I was like, "But why? Why would you do such a thing?" Um,
Cool
but
party trick.
I've never had vertigo, with the exception of, being a little too drunk a few times.
It's no, so different.
Oh, is it? In what way? That's great.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just like the emotion and energy around it. Like when you're drunk, you don't care about anything and you've like chosen to do it. But vertigo is just like something that comes onto you that is so uncomfortable. But I actually, now that I think about it, I did say when I first had it that I was like, it's like the worst feeling of being drunk and being pregnant when you're terribly nauseous, like in first trimester, which I had with both pregnancies. So yeah, it's just a terrible combo.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. We should do an episode on vertigo, which I'm no expert on, but vertigo, like I have another client who has something that is, it's dizziness, or it's a disequilibrium that's not vertigo, but it's vertigo-like symptoms. So I want to learn more about that. And then we should definitely talk about vertigo. Your vertigo is crazy. So I think I learned something in afterwards, which is you had a really intense concussion that, shockingly, when I mentioned that a couple of years later, you were like, wait, what are you talking about? And so Caitlin is in her office. I'm in my office in our house. We live in Cleveland, Ohio. And Caitlin's office is like, you can see it's an attic, right? The pitched roof, and behind her on that wall, you walk down the stairs, and it's this really strange setup, because it's not that you actually have to duck to get out of the door, but
Got it.
somehow in your incredibly graceful descent, you just like, did you fall into
I
it?
was carrying too many things and probably rushing because I have too many things to do and slipped. And so instead of walking down the stairs, I just pitched forward and my head hit the top of the door jamb, right smack in the middle of my forehead.
Like, that was so intense.
It was.
Yeah. And you had headaches for a long time, and you needed to lay down a lot. And so what I learned in the future later is that vertigo is actually a post-concussion symptom.
Mm.
So I believe, whether I'm right or not, I always think I'm right. It's my job to think I'm right. That's why you got vertigo. But then your other
I was
vertigo,
also very stressed out, like working a job that was really had me like in constant stress. So I think that was a contributing factor too.
how often would you say your job does not keep you in constant stress?
Well, I left that job, and so
Oh,
I'm
yeah, I got it. So another time you got vertigo was we went to an amusement park, and I stopped doing the rides like a long time ago, but my kids love them, so we would go, and you went on a ride and were just nauseous, right, the entire drive home. And it was like that last ride that you probably shouldn't have done, and woke up the next day with really intense vertigo, right?
yeah, I didn't do any rides then that day either. Like I don't think.
No, you did. You did a ride. No, you liked them more than me, but you did
But
one
I kind
ride.
of had stopped doing them, but I
Yeah,
do remember the one at the end. Like I think that
yeah.
was the only one I
Oh,
did.
got it.
Um, and yeah, nauseous the whole way home, and then 2 days later, slammed with vertigo again.
And then to get the Epley technique. All right, we're going to stop talking about vertigo.
Save it for that
Yeah,
episode.
save it for another episode. So this is something I use. This is another toy. This is not like an exercise toy, but this is um, there's a word before it, Natura mat.
Acupressure? Oh,
What?
acupressure.
Acupressure mat. Thank you very much. So there's a flat one that you stand on or you lay on, and then this is for the neck. So I meditate every morning fairly consistently, like in a really good way, since last August. And I've been trying to meditate for 40 years, and for whatever reason, last summer something clicked. And for the first few months, I was meditating sitting up, but it was really a pain. Like my feet were falling asleep, and I get the point of meditation in a lot of ways is to get through that discomfort, but spoiled or lazy or I don't know. I researched, I said, is there anything wrong with meditating laying down? To which the Google machine told me there really isn't. You can meditate sitting on a bench, you can meditate sitting in lotus, you can meditate laying down. And constructive rest, which you mentioned earlier, is my favorite position, my favorite pose of all time that I try to get everyone to do for long periods of time. And I started meditating in constructive rest. And then this is kind of funny, but I bought this for my sister-in-law a few years ago, and she gifted it back to me Christmas. So I got the acupressure mat. So I am now meditating, doing constructive rest, and putting this under my neck for 20 minutes every morning. And one of the things I say is I do so many different things for my body and my health. I have no idea what's working, right? I have no idea if it's effective, but I definitely feel I've had neck issues forever. And I feel like my neck, I have as good a range of motion in my neck right now as I've had for years and years. And is it from 8 months of 6 months, 7 months of doing this every morning under my neck? It's very possible. But this thing is a really cool, weird toy, especially it doesn't hurt on the neck, but when you stand on the mat and it is intense on the feet. So I didn't even put that on my list of toys, but that's a really great one. And I'm not a masochist, but I can't wait for it to get a little bit warmer so I can start meditating with my back on the spikes along with my neck. Um, because have you seen the movie Crumb? Was that before we got together?
From?
Yeah.
I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's been around a long time. Crumb, a movie I highly recommend. And if you know my stuff, I use the picture Keep on Truckin' by Art Crumb to show how people walk really badly. So there's a documentary out there by Terry Zwigoff called Crumb. And in it, it's about Art Crumb, but it's also about his family, and they are wild. So in the beginning, um, we meet his brother, and his brother has the tightest hips you can ever imagine. Like tight hips, you can see tight hips. He couldn't sit cross-legged. And when he'd bring his feet together, like in butterfly pose or Baddha Konasana, his knees were up by his shoulders, like insanely tight hips. But he announces at the beginning of the documentary, I need to learn to meditate in lotus on a bed of nails.
Oh my God.
And he proceeds to, over the course of the document, by the end, he's meditating in lotus on a bed of nails while doing the string in and out of his mouth and nose. Like,
Oh my God.
he's a character. That whole family, it's a great movie. I've been meaning to watch it again, so maybe we should watch it together.
Okay. Do you know why the dog is barking, by the way?
I don't know why the dog is barking. The dog is barking because she's a moron and she's an idiot, and she drives us crazy.
I just don't know if we're getting a package or something.
We'll find out when we're
Or the
done.
car detailer is here.
Oh, no,
He's not supposed to come till 11. Okay, anyway, sorry.
yeah, we're getting our car detailed this morning, and I have to admit, I could care less about getting our car detailed. But our cat did pee in the car last week, and it does not, though it's getting better, it's going away,
It's
but
horrible.
it is pretty horrible.
It is horrible.
I had to drive my daughter home from school, and we're in the car for a half hour before I mentioned the cat. And as soon as she was like, "Oh my God, now I smell it." Like if you didn't say anything, I wouldn't have smelled it. So the acupressure mat, I'm really excited to meditate on the spikes of the acupressure mat. I've done it. I did it last summer, like once or twice, and it's kind of intense. But you get used to anything. Like that's my thing, like if you want to make something a habit, you're going to be able to do it. And we are like creatures that can just change our habits. And what's one of the weird things I talk about is like it's as easy to build a bad habit as it is to build a good habit. And if not easier to build a bad habit. And I am a creature of some bad habits, but I also try to build good habits. I didn't realize you got the neck thing for the vertigo. That was connected to that.
Well, I mean, it might have also just been this chiropractor's standard I don't see her anymore, but it seems like it might have just been one of her standard protocols for neck health. But I think of it as like a vertigo preventative because it seemed like it was related to my neck alignment, but I don't know.
I am very happy on this podcast to disparage people when if I don't mention their name. And so I had met.
I'm not. That's not me.
So it is definitely not you. I met this chiropractor and we traded sessions, and then she's local, and Caitlin got this vertigo and reached out to her and like share like the your first experience of that time of working
It
with.
was incredible. It was the most caring and um it was such a vulnerable experience to be taken through the Epley because I'm like feeling vertigo and the Epley maneuver. I mean, we should save it for the vertigo session.
Yeah, totally. We'll save Epley
But
for
yeah, it was
but
it was an incredible experience. And then the standard care was much less intimate and much more like part of a machine. So
that is a great way to put it. Like it became that it's a machine, right? Where you go in, she's so busy, people are always waiting on her. She spends 3 minutes to 5 minutes in the room with you, and then you go to the front desk and they're selling you packages. And
well, you only get the package sale once and then you have a package. It's not like I was constantly being sold to.
well, that's interesting. That is not my memory of it. My memory was that they were like kind of hardcore salespeople, always trying to get you.
No,
I
no.
think chiropractors get a really bad rap in a lot of ways, but then you found a chiropractor who I won't mention, but I've now been to him a couple of times. I had a really bad fall in December, the day after Christmas. We were at one of my son's hockey games, and the parking lot was like a sheet of ice, and I hit it, and I hit my elbow, which blew up like pretty big, and I landed on my elbow and my butt. And it was kind of comedy because my daughter was trying to help me up, and it was that slippery. Like she started to fall. Like I had to really figure out how to stand up from this ice without slipping again. And I have thought a couple of times, like, wait, aren't we supposed to sue Thornton for bad care of their parking lot? So that tennis elbow, which is, the thing, like, I don't know everything about what I do, but I use the Google machine and it's really helpful. So I had tennis elbow on my left elbow a few years ago from biking. And to me, it's always important when you have injuries, you got to figure out why you have them. And it's not always so easy, but it took me a while to realize, oh, I got it from biking, changed my biking technique, and eventually the tennis elbow went away. I did see a PT once, and she gave me a great exercise that I've used with other people, never to any effect. They're always like that. I don't feel anything there. And I'm like, wow, I love that exercise. I got vertigo now from that fall, so when you look into, I mean,
Not vertigo.
vertigo, thank you. I got tennis elbow. So when you look into what are the causes of tennis elbow, it's very often a repetitive stress. Like you do the same thing incorrectly over and over again. And then you develop tennis elbow. But I got it. But falling an injury is one of the ways of doing that. So I've now been going to this chiropractor Caitlin found, and he's just amazing. He's really good at what he does. It's an incredibly sweet environment. Even though it's fast, it's not more than 15 minutes. You never feel rushed, and yeah, it's really great. So
And
one
you
other
also get massage, like part of the release technique. I forget
right.
now what it's called, but active release. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, he basically gave me active. He reset my. I used to go to a chiropractor in New York religiously, and I worshiped this woman. She was an amazing chiropractor. She had magic fingers. She was incredible, Lisa Kirsch. I'm very happy to share names of people I like. And Lisa was just incredible for me. And I met her at a point where my sacrum was out, like I had really serious pelvic issues, and it took a while, but those went away. And then I would see her like every couple of months for maintenance. And then I hadn't seen a chiropractor in like 8 years since we moved here. And I've done pretty well. But something in that fall, something really messed me up. And I went and he was just laughing. He's like, your pelvis is just so out. So he put my pelvis back in and he did the active release on my forearm and gave me one exercise. And that was a month ago. So I've seen him twice now, and I'm 90% healed in the tennis elbow. And it's possible that I could have worked it out by myself because sometimes it's just a time frame thing, but he's helping me a lot. The problem with the fall was so intense was for months up until now, like every time it didn't hurt me except when I'm sitting, and it doesn't even hurt like when I'm sitting, but I had to brace myself to stand up because it hurts so much to elevate out of the chair. And now that's like
Wait, where did it hurt to elevate?
right at the like top of the sacrum.
Oh,
Oh my God, it was so intense, and now I'm like 85 to 90% better. Now I'm standing up half the time during the day, not even feeling it. But I wanted to share one other crazy thing about elbows and patterns and bad habits. So I'm a huge sports fan. I've talked about that over and over again. And, this is like the best time of the year. You got hockey playoffs, basketball playoffs, go Knicks, and baseball started, right? So Caitlin works a lot, and I can spend a lot of time watching sports. The Yankees, who I hate with a passion, as is my job as a New Yorker. I'm a Met fan, and I
boo.
don't get people who like both teams in the city. It's like, wait, what are you talking about? You have to have an allegiance. So, love the Mets, hate the Yankees. I was 6 years old in 1969 when the Mets won their first World Series. I remember getting onto the school bus, getting off the school bus. It was a day game, the final, the seventh game of the, no, it was five. I think they won in five. It was a day game. And I just remember getting on the bus and we were listening on the radio. And I got home right at the very end of the game to see the Cleon Jones make the final catch. So I love baseball. All right. So the point of this story is it is about elbows. Giancarlo Stanton is a player on the Yankees. He's amazing. Like he's getting a little older, but he's really an amazing athlete, amazing hitter. And I don't know if the story was that last season he was struggling in the first half, but for whatever reason, he made some adjustments to his swing in the second half to try to improve it. And when we're talking about professional athletes and the adjustments they make, right? We are talking tiny little things that they do to make changes. Like it's extraordinary how aware these guys are of how they move. Anyway, he made these adjustments to his swing and now he's going to miss the entire season because of elbow problems that developed from this one adjustment he made to his swing in the middle of last year. I mean,
That's wild.
isn't that wild? That's so crazy to me.
And then doing it over and over again in practice, it just
That's
messes
exactly
it
it.
up.
That's exactly it. There was a different thing, like on the Mets, they have a player, Brandon Nimmo, and he was kind of struggling. And he actually had a great first half last year, and then he wanted to make a change. And who knows why? Because these guys they can be really neurotic, right? You're always trying to get better. You're always trying to get better. And the change he made destroyed his season. And he had an incredibly bad second half because once you make the change and something goes wrong, you just go down that rabbit hole. So yeah, I am sort of obsessed with athletic performance, even though I am not I am, maybe you can say I'm an athlete. I bike fairly regularly and I do yoga, but I'm not really an athlete like that.
You're an athlete.
Um,
You can call yourself an athlete.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it's funny when I talk about getting into yoga when I was in my 30s. I had always wanted to be a good athlete. I had always wanted to play sports and do something well, and I was just mediocre. I was saying to my son the other day, like, the good thing about my childhood was I was never picked last, right? I was never picked first, far from it. I was always in the middle of the pack, but at least I wasn't picked last. But I always had dreams, like, what kid who likes baseball doesn't dream of like hitting the home run in the ninth inning, etc., right? And it wasn't until I got to yoga in my 30s that I excelled at something physically.
Mhm.
And my hypermobility made me born to do yoga. And that was really a really profound thing for me in in life, that discovering something you can do really well. Like I do most things I undertake fairly well, decently, you know. Um, I would say I lack a work ethic to be great at things, but I do things pretty well. But yoga was the first thing where I was like, oh, wow, I am really good at this. Of course, until, 2 years later, blew out my knees and had a bunch of surgeries, which led me to today. So I have no complaints about that. What got you into yoga?
I mean, my first yoga class was in Bozeman, Montana. I was living there in a ski town, and I remember it being like in a dark gym with, I don't know, candlelight, and it was very slow and relaxing. And I was like, yeah, I don't get it. And
Right.
never went back, and then went to Jivamukti in New York, and that kind of hooked me in. And then found Om Yoga, which did alignment, which was much better for me, much more aligned for me than just the like, vinyasa and spirit, which was what Jivamukti was all about.
Yeah, I also started at Jivamukti. My story was I was rollerblading a lot, like, and I mean a lot. Like I was rollerblading around all five boroughs. I'd go on like 25-mile rides. And so I used to rollerblade over the Brooklyn Bridge fairly regularly. And one day I was rollerblading over, I was like at the base of the bridge and I saw a friend of mine ahead of me on his bike. So I had to work really hard to catch up and I'm screaming like, Mark, Mark, Mark. And I caught up to him and we're chatting. And I was like, dude, you look really good. What's going on? He goes, I'm doing yoga. I said, oh, I'll be there tomorrow. Like, my mother made me do yoga when I was 6 years old. I've mentioned this on the podcast. Like, she was doing yoga at the HES, the Hebrew Educational Society in Brooklyn, with Miss Lorraine, who was like her guru and just a much loved person. So she made me do it, basically like daycare, like childcare. But I didn't want to do it. I was 6. I just wanted to be in the park with my friends or on the block playing punch ball. Like, didn't make any sense to me. But I was really good at it then. Like, I was able to do full splits, and they could not believe it. Like who are you that you can at 6 years old drop into a full split? We did tumbling and stuff. But anyway, I stopped doing it as soon as I could. Like as soon as I was able to say, I don't want to do that anymore. It's a bunch of girls in leotards. Like, where do I fit in?
Then it became more appealing to you when you were an adult. A
I am
bunch
a,
of girls in leotards, I
yeah,
mean.
that's exact. Thank you very much. Um, we tell the story, or I tell the story that I had no interest in being a yoga teacher. I was a carpenter at a yoga center, and the owner really wanted me to take her teacher training because she thought I'd be a good teacher, and she was right. Like, I think I'm pretty good at what I do. And I didn't have a girlfriend at the time. So I said, I'm going to be like, there are 3 men in the class, and I think the other 2 were gay, but maybe one of them wasn't. I was like, all right, I'm going to go interview all these women. And I literally, like, kind of, interviewed all these women and went out to lunch, and Caitlin won the lottery. So it was a very sweet thing. But the day I walked into Jivamukti, even though I hated the incense, because Nag Champa is like the worst.
Oh, I love Nag Champa. I
I
miss
know.
it.
Yeah, my daughter loves Nag. I mean, that doesn't do it for me. But
Better than patchouli.
yes, much better than patchouli. That's true. Patchouli is the scent of my high school years. All
Hmm.
the hippie girls in their patchouli. But I feel like when I walked into Jivamukti and was home. Like there was a picture of Hanuman, who I didn't know who he was at the time, doing the splits, carrying the top of a mountain, and it just all resonated with me. Like the second I was so I am a huge fan of Return to Childhood. Like I really think adulthood is about trying to find the innocence, to get back to the innocence of childhood somehow. So for me, the memory of being 6 and doing it and then walking into that yoga room at 32, like I was just home. And I started going 6 days pretty much immediately. And then I got into the Ashtanga practice, which is a really rigorous and intense practice. And then I blew out my knees. But blowing out my knees led me to Om Yoga because I stopped doing that kind of intense practice. And Om Yoga needed a carpenter. and someone who, because I was doing some carpentry work, because my girlfriend at the time was the manager at Jivamukti, and she hooked me up with like doing odd jobs around there. And then another guy who was doing odd jobs said, "Oh, this woman at home needed a carpenter." So that's how I found that, and that changed my life completely.
And
And
that's where we met.
that is where we met in our teacher training. And not that I should share too much of this stuff, but I often do. But I had another profound moment at home, which was my childhood was not a good one in the sense that I behaved very badly, and I was something like of a petty thief. And just like with everything else in my life, I was not particularly successful at being a petty thief, but I there wasn't many environments where I didn't look to steal something. And at 32, I go to Om Yoga and they hire me sight unseen. They didn't even want to meet me. I said, I hear you need a carpenter. And the manager said, okay, well, we'll leave the keys. Just come at the last class on Sunday and I'll leave you a list of things, right? So I get into the studio and they left. And I'm sitting there by myself, and it's like there's a store, and there are all these books that I would want to read, and there are mats, and there are props. And I had this big moment of like, these people are trusting me, and I'm now an adult and don't need to be such a piece of garbage. I am not going to steal anything. And that was for me, for what it's worth, it was a pretty big moment in my life. And that was the end of my youth in a weird way, and the end of my behaving badly. Um,
That's good.
yeah, it worked out. But, childhood was fun, and it's definitely
Yes.
better to not be that kind of person anymore. We will not do a podcast about
Your criminal
my
past.
criminal past. Yeah.
One
Uh,
day. That'll
um,
be in the movie.
but just to talk about my criminal past one more time, which is so intense, I was a criminal of privilege. I left high school and I sold t-shirts at rock concerts around the country, and I got arrested repeatedly because it was a misdemeanor to bootleg t-shirts. But there was never any sense that I was going to get in trouble. There was so much arrogance behind it. It's just very different to be a thief when you know your parents are going to bail you out if you get in trouble than to be someone who's doing it because they really need it. But that's the end of that story. All right, let's pick a toy from the background. Let's chat about the Bosu ball. Have you done much work on the Bosu?
At the gym, we do a lot of things on the Bosu. One of my
Right.
favorites was the other day, we do like what they call bus drivers, where you're just holding the Bosu and rotating it. And then they sometimes will give you a mod up, or you can do modification down to make it easier, or mod up. So the mod up for this one was to stand on one upside down while also doing that. And I was like, I can do that. I don't often get the mod ups, and I'm like under the radar, and they're not pushing me that much. But I saw someone doing it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna totally do that.
And did you nail it?
I mean, I wouldn't say nailed it, but I did it. Yeah,
Yeah, that's nailing it.
yeah,
Those are
it was
hard.
fun.
Bosu is not particularly light.
No, exactly.
I'm not going to do that. Uh, yeah, it's not particularly light. So again, there's the Bosu behind me,
The
and
big blue thing.
the blue thing, and it is Bosu, both sides up. That's where it gets its name. And I am totally spacing on the guy who invented it. He is, I believe, a genius of exercise. I don't know that he invented the ropes, the swing and the ropes, but I'm pretty sure, I don't want to give him credit that he doesn't deserve, but I'm pretty sure he is the guy that started with the rope work. Um, he's just brilliant. Like, I don't know if I can find,
David Weck.
what's that?
David Weck is his name.
David Weck, the Weck method. Yeah, he's an amazing, amazing guy. I'm just a huge fan. So the Bosu, like what I try to get people to buy things if they have space for it. And Bosu is a huge gym toy, right? Like every gym has the BOSU, and I have gotten so much work out of the BOSU. But then yet again, these days I don't use it that much, right? It sits under my desk and I use it more to show people what I want them to do on it. But it's both sides up, right? You can have the flat bottom, the hard bottom on the floor, and then you use the soft part for balancing, which is just amazing work. Jumping up and down, balancing on one foot, trying to do tree pose on the soft part. Like it's not easy work because there's so much movement in the feet, which I think is phenomenal, phenomenal work. It's great for your feet, it's great for your ankles. But for me, the best part of the Bosu is the hard part when you turn it upside down, like what you were saying, to balance on you stand on the hard part. And for me, I used to do squats. That's really, my routine was like 10 wide-legged squats, 10 feet together squats. It will rip open your quads. It's really, really great work. I can't recommend the Bosu enough. It's really an extraordinary tool for doing all of this work. And again, you don't need, like I teach tree pose on blankets, right? If I want to like recreate the Bosu. So, like tree pose in yoga is a really fascinating pose, right? It's a hip opener that I think most people do not do as a hip opener because they don't think about the alignment of their pelvis. So they just think you're trying to open the knee, but you take the hip with it. But it's also on one-legged balance. And anytime we're into one-legged balance, we're working the glutes, right? Gluteus medius, tensor fasciae latae, gluteus maximus, if you bend the knee and squat a little, right? So tree pose is just a great, great pose. But, and your feet are working. If like you're on your mat, right? You can feel your feet working. But where I discovered this was, uh, like when I first started doing yoga, you couldn't buy bad yoga props. Like they didn't exist, right? They only were like really high quality props. But then it became a huge business, like billion
Yeah.
dollar business. So you could buy a yoga block for like $5, but it was garbage, right? It was like soft, like a pillow. Like it was really like when you use a block for a standing pose that you put your hand on, that block should be hard, right? Like and they was making these really soft, horrible blocks. But then I did tree pose on it one day, and I was like, "Oh, that is really interesting." Like this thing that I think is actually a horrible tool has its purpose.
Right. It's kind of like at the gym where I teach yoga there, where it's on this floating floor, which is meant to be great for high impact, but standing balances are a lot harder. So sometimes I'll take everyone off the floor so they can feel the difference in like off of the floating floor onto a regular floor so they can feel the difference in stability. And yeah,
Well, that's so funny because like I've subbed for you a few times. I leave the floating floor to show the balance, and I leave them on the soft floor to do the balance.
I've done that too. Yeah.
Yeah, because so if let's say it was a soft block or a blanket, all of a sudden tree becomes only about your foot,
Mhm.
right? Where you will feel there are four layers of muscle in the foot in itself, intrinsic muscles. Like you have intrinsic muscles, extrinsic muscles. Intrinsic muscles are muscles like from joint to joint, and extrinsic muscles are muscles that cross multiple joints. So within the foot, you have four layers of intrinsic muscle. Like there's so much going on in there. And then you get on a blanket or a soft block or the Bosu or the sprung floor. And when your foot just literally starts going crazy,
Yeah.
me, that is a phenomenal exercise. So that's, I don't break out the Bosu in yoga class because I know not everyone has one. So I will use a blanket. You know, I've been using more and more toys in my own practice, kettlebells, and I just happen to have this on my desk, resistance bands. But when I'm teaching, and I encourage everybody to get them for my yoga classes. But then if like when you do my yoga classes, you can be live on video or not. And then the people who are on video don't have it, I'm not going to use it, right? As much as I would like to, but I'm really not going to force people to buy it. But I am trying to get all of my clients to get as many toys as they can if they're going to use them. And the Bosu is just one of my absolute favorite things. But it's interesting how you really can't create the softness. You can't create the movable flat side, but like
Right.
you can use a blanket or one of those garbage blocks for that. You also have that. So you go to, it's not a weightlifting gym. It's like a gym where they have 45-minute high intensity weightlifting classes,
Well,
right?
it's either a HIIT class or a strength class. So strength doesn't have any cardio with it. But yeah. And we use the Bosu for a ton of different things. I mean, one of the sickest exercises we've been doing lately is you put the Bosu on the ground and your feet at the wall and you're kneeling on the Bosu. And then as a hamstring exercise, you just lean forward on the Bosu until eventually you just have to like catch yourself with your hands.
Wow.
And so you're just holding yourself back with your hamstrings as you go down. And it's crazy.
Yeah, I want to try that later.
Yeah.
That does sound
Or
crazy.
we'll like do lateral hopping side to side, like skipping
Great.
over side to side. Um, Sometimes doing hip, like glute thrusters or just like a bridge, but with your back on the Bosu. I'm not sure why that is. We'll have to explore that and see.
Right.
But
No, and that you can, the thing is that, I don't invent things. I think I've come up with like 5 exercises in 25 years. So I just, copy other exercises.
yeah,
But you can come up with 9 million things to use the Bosu for.
for
Uh,
sure. Well,
another
they
thing,
also have a one called a terracore, which is basically an oblong Bosu.
right.
So it's just long and narrow, looks like a hot dog. But
No,
same thing with a flat bottom and a rounded float, air-filled top.
yeah, no, it's really funny because I was looking at that when I was there and I'm like, is that just, because it's not a David Weck product, is that just like ripping off the Bosu or is it actually a genuinely different product? And I'm surprised he didn't come up with that. Um,
Right, right.
but you mentioned HIIT, so high intensity interval training. Uh, and that is something I really love. And that the idea of that is you do exercises full out and then you take a break and it's short duration. Um, do you like those classes?
I do, but I don't go to them as much. And I think they're, yeah, just as I'm learning about what's good for my body and especially being menopausal, um, it's like might be too much. And at like sometimes doing too much high intensity work creates more cortisol and it's more stress on your body. So I tend to prioritize the strength classes. But what I love about those classes is the endorphins. Like, there's nothing like moving quickly, sweating really hard, getting your heart rate up, and like the way I feel, that euphoric feeling afterward, I don't get from the strength classes. So I'll do those like once a week or every other week. Um, you know.
That's interesting. Why do you think you don't get them from the strength classes? That's so interesting.
I mean, I get a little bit. Like I always feel good afterward, but I don't know, there's just something about that like pushing yourself in the cardio way that's different from, like I'm sweating during a strength class, but nothing like the cardio classes.
Right, right.
I
Um,
mean, leg day and full body, they can be like really hard work, but it's just different.
yeah, I'm a yoga teacher and I bike as much as I can, and yet I can really safely say I hate exercise. Like if I never did another exercise if I could get away with not doing another exercise the rest of my life, I would. It's just that,
Really?
oh yeah, I mean,
I love it.
I know I love biking because it's not exercise. Biking does something to my brain. There's something about what biking does for my nervous system. I listen to podcasts, so there's something about like ASMR in my head. Like
But
there's
you don't love moving your body in general?
No. Like I do, yeah, of course I do. Like I love yoga, um, and it makes me really happy. But I'm my father's son, like the only exercise my father did his whole life was put a cigarette to his lips. That's like, so, and I was a really active kid, but yeah, no, exercise is something that I have had to force into my life. Like I said, I rollerbladed, like I do things. That's a lot. I'm really spoiled, right? I only do what I like. And when
Right.
it
But that's
comes,
reasonable.
it is somewhat, but when it comes to exercise, that's not always great. Like sometimes it's a bitter pill. Like sometimes it's just something you gotta do. Why I
Maybe
was
we
saying,
need to take dance classes again because, like, it's like, I don't know, there's something about, I'm surprised that you don't enjoy being in your body in that way. Like, because to me, even what you're saying about listening to the podcast, it's more like it's still a heady thing
oh
and the
yeah.
body just happens to be there. So, like, how can you be more embodied in the movements you do? It's interesting.
Well, like, I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's just that like when I talked about good habits and bad habits, my early life was all about bad habits, and now I've tried to change that and make it about good habits. And exercise is just a habit, more than a joy.
Hmm.
And I only bike 10 miles. I bike either 10 or 20 miles. 10 miles is not a huge bike ride. And I literally finished my ride feeling more relaxed than when I began. So I
Hmm.
do think it's a head thing. It's a nervous system thing,
Yeah.
um, which is really interesting. Uh, and I love yoga for the endorphins as much as it is, it's like backbending is nature's antidepressant. That's like my thing. But no, it's funny to be someone who is an exercise teacher who at his root really doesn't really love exercise. Like, what are you going to do if you're going to be honest with yourself, right? So we live in Cleveland where winters are just no fun. And this winter was particularly vicious. Like last winter, it barely snowed. So I'll bike into the 30s with my gear. I'm fully geared if there's no snow on the ground because the ice and snow and biking don't get along. Some people love it, but not me. This winter, it started snowing like right after Thanksgiving, and it kind of did not stop. Like it was just misery. Cleveland winter is really intense and it never ends. Like it is just starting to end now on May 8th, right? Spring is finally seems to be here, which is so intense because my family still lives in New York, and in April they're like, everything's blooming. Um, so last winter I tried to bring a bike trainer. I bought a bike trainer that is now in the basement, and that wasn't cheap. And I used it for like 5 days. Like I hated it so much. Like biking, and I bought the apps where you're biking around Italy, and oh my God, it was like torture. So I usually bike an hour, and I couldn't get through 15 minutes. Like I hated it so much. Again, then it gets to being spoiled. So last winter was really bad, but last summer is when I finally broke down and started getting into weightlifting, and I got kettlebells, which I really love. We have an episode about kettlebells. So this winter, I've been doing hit and kettlebells to replace biking. So even though I don't like exercise, I understand the need for it. And I got into like these exercises, Turkish get-ups, and I have a facility for these things, which is really good. I'm 62 years old and I'm still able to move in a fairly decent way, embodied or not. And
I mean, you're always exploring, right?
yeah,
Like you are trying new things and, finding new toys and new ways of moving. So it's just surprising to me to hear you that you hate exercise. I
and I
learned something new about you today.
there you go. I think I'm essentially lazy in a lot of ways, right? Like I'm pretty happy to sit on the couch, watch sports, watch movies, eat food. Like for me, cooking is my favorite thing on earth, right? And that's exercise, depending upon how you look at it and approach it. So I'm not
Yeah, it's
opposed to,
not sitting on the couch.
and it's not sitting on the couch. And yeah, and I love hiking and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so I discovered HIIT, high intensity interval training, which is considered to be a brain changing practice. And there are not a lot out there, right? So that HIIT is actually something that they believe can change your brain cells. And it's yoga has its value, meditate, everything has its value, but HIIT actually has a particularly beneficial thing that studies have shown in terms of changing the brain. So I got into HIIT like a couple of years ago, and the mistake I made was I started with something that was too advanced. So it was like, it was, and the thing about HIIT is you can do 10 minutes and be done. It's amazing, right? But this was fairly hardcore exercises with 10-second breaks in between. So that's hard. Like you work really hard for 30 seconds with a 10-second break, and then really hard for 30 seconds. By the time you're up to the fifth cycle, it's really, it's not fun. And
Yeah, that would not be good.
I
Yeah.
need to have fun. So this winter, I found a couple of like on YouTube beginner hit routines. And the one I've been doing is 15 exercises, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, right? And you're supposed to work as absolutely as hard as you can for 30 seconds. I work 70% as hard as but I do the exercises. And it's pretty amazing because 15 minutes later, it's really great to be able to get what you get done in 15 minutes, right? 15 minutes
Totally.
later, I've done this exercise that I'm sweating. It's a lot of work. And so that's what I have done this winter, exercise and Turkish hit routine and Turkish get-ups. And that is what's got me through the winter. But the truth is, I am so excited not to do them for 6 months. Like I am really psyched to get back on my bike and use that, So that got off the rails a little bit. We were talking about Bosu and the TerraCore and
Yeah,
David.
what other toys do you want to talk about? What about that Mobo board?
Oh yeah, let's finish with the Mobo board because
Okay.
I know you got to get going.
Yeah.
The Mobo board is an unbelievable toy. I'm going to actually pick it up and show it. And then again, it'll be on the show page on my website. So these are going to go up on YouTube and up on the website. And the Mobo board is an extraordinary toy. So it is just a piece of wood. I am not an affiliate. It costs $85. And one thing I can promise you, it is never going to break, right? You invest your $85 and it will never go wrong. And for whatever it's worth, this is like my third Bosu. I don't know why, but they've deflated. Like it's a weird thing. So, and they're not cheap. They're like $200 for a Bosu. So I think about those things because like I am both really cheap and really wasteful. So it's an interesting combination. Uh, so the genius of the Mobo board is that here you can see the outline of your foot, and the only toe you can put on the board is the big toe. So you have to learn to balance without using the other four toes. And if you,
And why? Why is that
so
important?
good question, Caitlin. If you've taken my yoga classes, you know that I say, uh, use the inner foot, use the big toe 20, 30 times within an hour, right? So in terms of the body, the foot is just extraordinary, right? 26 bones in each foot, uh, which is between the 2 feet. That's a quarter of the bones in the body. And the foot has an inner half and an outer half, and the inner half they're very divisible, like you can separate them. And the inner half is the inner arch, and the outer half is the outer arch, and then there's a transverse arch. But the inner foot is the weight bearing side of the foot. So, like the inner foot translates to the ankle, to the tibia, to the femur. The outer foot translates ankle, fibula, and the fibula actually doesn't even connect into the femur, right? It's below the edge of the tibia, and the tibia and fibula are super connected through something called the interosseous membrane, which is so strong it makes them like one bone. But the inner foot is the weight bearing side of the foot. When I'm teaching people to walk, it's how do you get to the inner foot? You have to push off the big toe. that the big toe in every step should have 100% of the weight of your body on it to push off. And all you have to do is pick up your shoes to look at how you wear your shoes out. Most people are not wearing their shoes out on the big toe. They're wearing their shoes out on the outer foot, which means
Right.
you're not using your big toe. So the Mobo forces you to develop the balance through the big toe. So, and then the way it works is you have these slots, right? They're numbered, and you change the slots. You move the pieces around so you're balancing in different ways. It's a really amazing toy. I will say it's not easy. Like the
So
Bose,
you stand on one foot and lift the other foot off the ground, or are you standing on both feet and just kind of like moving the foot on the
no,
Mobo?
you are balancing.
Uh-huh.
So you're doing all different things. You're balancing, you're trying to rock front to back, side to side, then you switch the numbers. You can do tree pose, you can do warrior three. Like I
Hmm.
can't do warrior three on the Mobo. It is really hard. I have this one client who's just, she's an extraordinary athlete. And it drives me crazy because like anything I give her the next week, she's like, "Oh yeah, watch me do Warrior Three on the Mobo." Um, and she's amazing, but it's also really annoying because like I can't do that. But it's an amazing tool. The thing is, what's really interesting is I think they came out like 2 or 3 years ago, and I thought it was going to be as big as the Bosu. Right? The Bosu is a ubiquitous thing. Everybody knows
Right.
the Bosu. It's just, and for good reason. Like I really do think it's incredible. Um, the Mobo has not taken off.
No, I
Not
don't, it doesn't have as many uses. Well, yeah, I feel like it's very niche.
It totally is. There's no question about it, but it's amazing. And
Agreed.
yeah, so it really has not taken off as much as I think it should.
But
So
for anyone who's like into optimizing their body and really wanting to find balance and finding the inner foot, like it's an amazing tool. And there's nothing like it. Like it's very unique.
that's right. In truth, there are now copycats that you can get for a lot less. But like, I don't know. I think the Mobo is better.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
you can always buy something cheaper, and sometimes it's worth it, and sometimes not.
I
Uh,
don't love my cheap roller. I wish I
right,
paid
exactly.
more for the roller, the foam
Exactly.
roller.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And that's the way it works, you know. While the opposite, let me show one last toy to finish up. That's a hand toy that I talk about. This. Uh,
Oh, I think I have mine.
what's that?
I think I have mine.
I gave these to everybody last year for Christmas. So this is a grip strengthener, right? That this cost me $6 on Amazon. And the truth is, when I went to buy it, they sell them for $50. Like the classic old school one, it's silver, and this one is adjustable. It's $6. I don't know. This is never going to break, right? Like, why in the world would I need to spend $50 on this toy that's $6? I think everyone should have one of these. Like, I think these are great. The more you work at the desk, the more you want to use this grip strength trainer. And again, it is adjustable. You start off at the lightest pressure. So I get that, you know, some things are fine to buy as cheap as you can get, and some things not, as those things go. All right, so we are gonna call it a day in Caitlin's inaugural visit to the pod, and thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this and you want to support us, because so we're gonna Alex and I fell off the radar a little bit, and in the beginning we were really consistent, and then we started not meeting enough. So we're going to try to do this once a month, and then maybe twice a month, and if all goes well, weekly. I think Caitlin coming to, I think you passed your audition. Uh,
Thank you. So
Ca-
relieved.
Caitlin coming on board, I think is going to actually expand our topic range. Like I literally thought of, you know, 10 episodes that we could do just from what we've been talking about because you have an expertise. I have nothing really to say about menopause, but I know that my audience is a lot of women of a certain age. We've just like we could do an episode on HIT. Like I think there's a lot of room for growth and opportunity to discuss really interesting topics. So if you enjoyed this episode or any of the episodes and you want to support us, the simplest thing you can do is to follow us on whatever podcast platform you use. Just hit follow, and that actually helps us quite a bit. And then another thing would be to write a review about what you like. And if you don't like, you can do that. But thankfully, we've not had many bad reviews. We've had some pretty good ones. But reviews and follows really do help us get the word out and to grow. So we're going to try to be more consistent about this. And Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm really excited about moving forward.
Me too. This was super fun.
Awesome.
Love it.
All right, guys, have a great day. Anything else to add before we go, Kate?
No, just happy to be here.
Awesome. Take care, everyone.